Narcissus. He is a Greek legend who was so obsessed with himself that when he saw an image of himself in the reflection of a puddle, he became totally entrenched, and he died there looking at himself. So what are we talking about? Of course, millennials, right? And narcissism. And there's so much that's leveled at millennials. Much of you work with millennials in the workplace. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of context about where we come from economically based on some data and something a little bit more personal. First, most important thing about a millennial, don't call them a millennial, right? We don't like that. We don't like that because largely we don't like to be characterized. We don't like to be classified or generalized. We think that we're unique and special, like this right here, right? And so, but the thing is that I also fall victim to this tendency. I think that I'm really unique, and I think that I'm really special. So today, I ask you, because I don't want to be like all the other millennials, I'm going to title my speech, Call Me a Millennial. I got to be different somehow, right? So the thing with millennials is that we're also called lazy. It happens so much, right? Oh, they're lazy and they don't go out and do stuff. And what we see is that in the data, millennials actually agree. They think that Americans, on average, are much more lazy than the previous generations have. Now, why is that? There could be two things. Either one, it's because, well, they spend a lot of time with lazy people, so of course they think they're lazy. Or the other one is that they're really self-critical. In fact, I think that it's likely the other one. The reason I think this is because in this Pew survey, we see that on 4 positive traits and 4 negative traits, millennials consistently rate themselves the worst compared to other people. And this is unique. Now, I want to talk about narcissism, and this is a really important graph. You see, we're comparing here gray hair and wrinkles with to the power of joint replacements with time in front of the mirror, and you can see it drops down. So maybe some of that narcissism is merited. When you're younger, of course. Would you not be narcissistic? We also see a lot of millennials not getting married. They're putting off a whole bunch of different commitments. Not only marriage, but buying houses, buying cars, long-term commitments to careers. And some of this actually has something to do with the economy. What we see is that there's real economic hardship coming to millennials. And we see that with not only men in the workforce, who for the first time in 3 generations are seeing less employment, but also with women. So you may say, oh, well, maybe women are taking those jobs. We do see the most diversity of any generation ever with the millennials, but we don't see that that women are taking those jobs. Also, it's down from the last generation. So that's very interesting. But despite this, millennials are super smart. They are on track to be the most educated of all the generations, the largest generation as well, and the generation with the most debt. So to recap real briefly, we see that millennials are a little bit narcissistic, but maybe there's also some self-awareness. There's laziness, but this is something that's being worked on. And there's a lack of commitment, but there are some real economic hardships that they're dealing with. But I think the real important thing to focus on here is the question of where these generations come from. You see, it's important to see that generations are prescriptive, not descriptive. You don't look at the data and pull out, oh, a millennial generation. Rather, it's divisive where you say, these people must be different in some way. We arbitrarily define them. And if you remember that first slide, the silent generation, they don't like being called this. This is people between 70 and 87. And maybe part of the reason is that it's not descriptive of them. We have people like Rosa Parks who are part of this generation. A woman who made an enormous impact in her society. And maybe she didn't do it particularly with words, but she did it silently. And that impact is remarkable, right? So to call them the silent generation is not accurate. When we look at the people who participated in World War II, right, and they stood up against a real threat to humanity, this was standing for principles that really mattered. To call them the silent generation is not applicable, and in many ways, I think that we need to rethink the categories that we put people in. Millennials, or maybe it's skin color, maybe it's gender, whatever it is, these are not useful for describing people. And so the challenge that we are faced with today is that we do exist in these averages, these categories that have been invented. But averages, on average, don't do a great job at describing the individual. And so what I challenge you today whenever you're talking with the next millennial, sure, you can call me a millennial. I have some pride in that. But also, be able to look past the categories, look past the generation, and instead see the individual beyond it. Thank you very much.